If there's any novel that deals with the themes of violence, cruelty, eating disorders, control, autonomy, power, then it has to be. Hi everyone, we're discussing The Vegetarian by Hancock. If you go online or read some basic reviews, you'll know that most people consider this novel as a feminist text, and they're not wrong. While most of the themes in the novel center around that, in the space of academic literature or in the space of academia, we consider this novel more than that. So, in this video, I will be taking you through this novel in such a way that a literature student will be preparing for their exams. Now, this is equally relevant to anyone who has studied the book or who is interested to know more about the book or open their eye in a different way. For every criticism or idea that I present, I will be telling you what the scholar has argued about it, why they have argued it, and whether the novel actually supports that reading or not. And in the process, I will also tell you what it feels as a reader to go through this journey, because literature is also about personal experiences. Now, before we begin anything, we need to clearly understand what happens inside the novel. So we're introduced to the protagonist and her husband in the first part. Young-hae is a completely ordinary woman. She is not ambitious. She does not demand anything out of the ordinary. And in the first part itself, we see that this is the exact reason why her husband likes her. He has explicitly mentioned that he likes her because of her passive personality and because she is an ordinary woman. Now, if you think about that for a second, you would realize that she's not being chosen for exactly who she is. Rather, she is being chosen for the role she's going to play in society of that ordinary wife. Now, all of this gets overhauled when one day Young-hae decides she will stop eating meat. And this is because she starts having violent dreams about blood and flesh. Now, this may sound very common to someone living in India or the US or UK or any other part of the world. However, in Korean society, it's not normal. I'll explain why. This is because in Korea, eating meat is not only very common, it is seen as a sign of masculinity, power, or even sometimes social status. So if you stop eating meat, especially if you're a woman who decides to make this change, you're not clearly disrupting the system, you're also going against living a normal life. The novel is interesting not because of this decision, rather it's interesting because how other people are reacting to this change. This book is divided into three parts. The first is from the perspective of her husband. The second is from her brother-in-law's side, and the third is from the sister's perspective. In the first part, we see marital disharmony between Young-hae and her husband, their relationship, the insides of their relationship, how Young-hae takes everything out of her fridge one night, and this is a behavior that is not acceptable to her husband. She also doesn't like wearing a bra, and when she goes to the office dinner with her husband, the people around her clearly stare at her and ask her weird questions that make her uncomfortable and the husband uncomfortable. Her husband takes the help of his father-in-law and Young-hae's mother and her family to get her to start eating meat again. This brings us to the most common scene, which is the force feeding scene. Her husband and her brother-in-law pin her down to the ground, and her father actually force feeds her meat inside her mouth, and everybody else is just watching. To this, Young-hae revolts like a maniac, and she also cuts her wrist open. She is hospitalized. Her husband decides to divorce her. She still rejects everything and anything that involves meat or animal products because she feels that there's something inside of her which calls out for the animals and everyone she has eaten over the years. Like she has taken their lives and she doesn't feel happy about it. In part two, we see how her brother-in-law uses her body in the name of art. He paints on her body and his body, and when they get physical together, he videotapes everything, all in the name of art. Part 3 is from the perspective of her sister. In this part, Young-hae is sent to an asylum where she is monitored. She's kept inside closed doors. She doesn't eat any food. All she thinks about is being a tree. Yes, she wants to photosynthesize all the sunlight and make her own food and wants to become a tree. So this is the point where everybody starts getting confused. Like, why does she want to become a tree? What's so special about a tree? Why only tree? Why not anything else? Why is she rejecting everything else to become a tree? But there's still questions like, is this novel only about feminism, or is it completely madness? Is it psychological? And because these questions are unanswered, many critiques have talked so much about it. So let's begin with the most common interpretation. Many critics have said that the book represents female body as something which is controlled by society, and that is absolutely true. Because this is not just about one family, it represents the entire of Korean society. Korean society borrows a lot from Confucian traditions, and not only Korea, China and Japan have also borrowed from this 2500-year-old traditions. This places women at the bottom of the hierarchy. They're expected to be demure, restrained, quiet, obedient. And we see all of that happening to Yonghai in the first part, especially. She keeps everything tidy and maintained and at the right time as it should be. There's also a moment in the book where he physically asserts his power over her when he forces himself onto her, and all of this is described in a very casual tone in the book. But this control is subtle in the marriage. It also becomes violent outside the marriage when her father forces meat to her. And on the surface, all of this look like family conflict, but feminist readings have identified this is a systematic problem where society tries to control someone directly through their body. It also represents how male desire is sometimes treated as entitlement. This continues throughout the novel when we see that her brother in law treats her like an object of art and manipulates her innocence. However, there is a very important conclusion scholars make here that Yong Hai really has no agency over herself. She truly does not own anything, that she is not seen as a person, but she is always seen as someone who is being used. Therefore, when Yonghai decides that she will stop wearing a bra, she is rejecting that male gaze, and she is also trying to regain that agency over herself. But to do so, she does not take normal means of speaking out. She just completely goes silent. Language for humans is a way to communicate, and in many ways language is a means to control over people as well, because we see when there were wars between England and France imposed their French language on the English. So language does become means of control power. But when Yonghai decides to completely go silent and not speak, it means that she's refusing to participate in that system that has already snatched her voice from her. So far, we have seen how she's trying to gain autonomy of herself. But now let's expand our lens a little bit further and see how feminism is represented as a relationship between humans and ecology directly. This is where we come into the ecofeminism framework. So, ecofeminism is the idea which tells us that the exploitation of women and the exploitation of nature are both the same kind of exploitation, and they stem from the same way of patriarchal thinking, that one thing has to be above the other. And when we apply this idea to Yong Hae's refusal, we see that this is not simply a personal choice or a feminist act in that way. This is a complete rejection of violence and humanity around her. Throughout the story, Yonghai starts identifying herself more and more with plants. At the end of the novel, she is doing handstands. She feels that roots are coming out of her, flowers are blooming from her. She has literally said that I'm not an animal anymore. All I need is sunlight. So she's rejecting food, human, biology, survival also. From an ecofeminist perspective, this is a rejection of anthropocentric worldview. This simply means a way of thinking where humans are at the top and everything else exists for us, for humans. Yonghai is refusing this hierarchy completely. She's trying to exist outside of this hierarchy. And that is why she wants to go to a non-violent pre-human state. And this pre-human state is where there is no domination, there is no consumption, there's no levels or hierarchy. So ultimately, the novel is eco-feminist because it suggests that female liberation is linked to environmental sustainability, and a more respectful relationship with the environment. All of this is fine, but there's also an anti-feminist angle to the novel, because when I was reading it, I personally felt that Young Ha, she was just simply being there, and being there is not enough. She was giving up. She was not fighting back. She is not explaining herself. She's not trying to justify what she is doing. And to me, it was a little bit absurd. The only reason that she was giving was, I had a dream. Okay, that may be the beginning of something, but I had a dream cannot be everything. So, as a reader, I kept asking if you feel so disconnected from the people around you or from the values that people hold these days, you should first try to speak and change those. And if that doesn't work, then you can do all these weird means of protest. But to me, that did not connect. Some scholars have said online that this novel does not give you any hope. And she's the kind of personality who is distant and absorbed into herself. So even when her transformation into plant or like not eating meat, that era starts, it does not feel like a sudden rebellion or something. It feels like a continuation of her silence and quietness. Yes, the world around her is clearly patriarchal. There is control, power, but if there is no space to recover in a novel or rebuild or survive within that system, then I don't think it's a feminist text. Because Yonghai is not overcoming whatever burden is on her. She's being consumed through it. And this is exactly why some of the critiques online have also called the empowerment in this novel is problematic. So if we look closely at what happens to her, she harms her body, she refuses nourishment, and she becomes physically weaker. So there is a difficult question here that we need to answer. Can self-destruction really be called liberation? Because if liberation is represented like this, then what kind of freedom are we really talking about? So some scholars even go further and suggest that this narrative risks reinforcing the idea that if you are someone who refuses your assigned roles, then you will be thrown out of society. You will be seen as someone who is unstable, irrational, or insane. So the narrative might actually be showing how the system absorbs and neutralizes anything that goes against it. There's also another critique that I found particularly interesting, that Yonghai's refusal of language is not a powerful protest, rather, it is a form of retreat. Instead of reclaiming her own voice, she completely abandons it, and the final plant stage of the vegetative state, that is just one form of passivity into other. It cannot be represented as liberation. So, therefore, this was all about the anti feminist angle of the novel. So, by the end of the novel, it is pretty clear that everybody around her calls Yonghai as mentally ill. She's institutionalized. By that I mean she's sent to an asylum. She's monitored there. And, she's treated as someone who needs to be fixed. Everybody starts beginning and asking the question, what if this novel is not just about social protest or social rebellion? What if this is actually the case of a psychological breakdown? From a clinical perspective, her decision to stop eating meat is not seen as a personal and ethical choice. It's rather a sudden behavioral shift. And when we look at what follows, the interpretation starts to feel more convincing because she begins to withdraw from language, isolates herself from everyone around her, and she refuses food entirely. She does not want to eat anything. I only want to live through sunlight. I will photosynthesize and I will live. This is what she is doing. But these are not just symbolic actions. These, in psychological terms, are symptoms which can be associated with catatonia or psychosis. So, from this perspective, her transformation is not a form of resistance, but a gradual loss of connection from reality. She loses her touch base with reality. But if you're also talking about psychology, we have to bring in the most important element in the novel, which is her dreams. Yonghai's transformation begins with a dream, and these dreams are all violent, graphic, filled with blood, flesh. Scholars often connect this to trauma theory, especially of the works of Kethi Karuth. She basically talks about how trauma does not return to us as a clear memory, rather, it returns to us in fragments. It's not a story that we can explain in a linear fashion. So, what Yonghai is experiencing is not imagination, actually. It may be a result of a memory that she cannot completely or fully understand at the moment. And the novel actually gives us clues about where it all began. It all began in her childhood. She received a lot of violence from her father, and she's the only one that could not escape his temper. There's even a line that suggests that she carried this suffering deep within herself, almost physically. This is where another idea from trauma studies come in, where trauma is not expressed through language, it is expressed through your body. And in academic terms, we call it somatic representation of trauma. Somatic means through your body. So when Young Ha is refusing everything around her and her body is deteriorating, it is not just deteriorating, it is actually trying to speak for itself. Up until now, we've been asking questions about society, gender, and psychology. But let's take a step back and ask something more fundamental. What if Young Hai is experiencing existential crisis? At its core, existentialism asks, what is my identity? Who am I? What is the meaning of all this? Is your identity something given to you by society? Or if it is something that you choose for yourself? We know that Young Hai's husband and her family constantly try to define her. And in existential terms, we already call this bad faith, but others refuse to recognize her freedom to redefine herself. So now let's discuss some ideas by Jean-Paul Sartre. He's also a Nobel Prize laureate, but he rejected Nobel Prize. Sartre makes a very powerful argument. He says that human beings are condemned to be free. Now, what this means is that whether we like it or not, we are responsible for our actions and we cannot accept that responsibility. Even if we do nothing, that is still a choice. So, from an existential perspective, Young Hai is rejecting a need for validation. She's not trying to offer any explanation or justifications. She's simply trying to choose. And in that sense, a transformation is a radical assertion of freedom. But there's another layer here. In existentialism, we also talk about what is absurd. And this is the idea that humans search for meaning in a world that does not offer any possible solutions. This creates a kind of conflict, a tension between what we really want and what the world has to offer. Now, if we look at Young Hai again, she seems to reach a point where everything around her is completely meaningless and completely empty. She does not try to fix the system, she tries to leave it intact. Now, this answers why she wants to become a tree. It is a very deliberate movement away from humans and away from human violence. This idea is quite similar to the ecofeminism idea we discussed, but at the core of the both, we are discussing that she's rejecting human life altogether. So if Young Hai's transformation is this quiet and this internal, there must be some way the society is responding to it, because we all know that society cannot let go of something which is not normal according to them. Bring in the idea of Michel Foucault. He talks about biopower, which talks about how institutions try to control our bodies by telling us what is normal and what is ill. And once something is labeled as abnormal, it becomes something that needs to be rectified. So the moment Young Hai stops behaving according to the expectations of society, she's sent to a psychiatric hospital, she's physically restrained, and there she's force-fed once again with tubes and all, and that is even more brutal. So on the surface, we may see that the doctors are caring for her. This is all presented as care to us, but scholars have called this as a means to bring her back into a system that she's already rejected. It's almost like you're disciplining a body that is no longer behaving the way it should behave. The doctor clearly states his first duty is to preserve a life. Now, this may sound ethical and reasonable to you, but in order to preserve her biological life, the institution is completely ignoring her agency. Her refusal to eat is not seen as a decision, rather, it is treated as a failure of body. Now, if you look at the back of the novel, you see it is often described as Kafka's tale of power. Now, this word Kafka's gets used a lot. It is referring to the style of writing of Franz Kafka. He describes situations which are strange, unsettling, and even sometimes illogical. It is where everybody reacts to something bizarre and deeply strange in a very normal way. This is often compared to Franz Kafka's novella, The Metamorphosis. The reason is simple because in Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa wakes up one day and he finds that he has become an insect. Now, instead of everybody trying to figure out what is like how to get him back to his normal state, everybody starts thinking, what use is he now? That is because Gregor was the sole breadwinner of the family. His identity was tied to working, and the moment he loses that function, he loses value as a human being. So, if we parallel this to Young Hai, her role in society is also defined by her utility, but the moment she stops performing that role, she's no longer seen as normal. And just like Gregor, she is also gradually stripped of her humanity, and she is no longer treated as a person with thoughts or desires. But the comparison is also not just about the plot, it is also about the style of writing. One of the key features of Kafka's writing is his very detached, matter of fact tone. He describes bizarre, even horrifying situations as if they're completely ordinary. And something similar happens in this novel. Yong Hai's husband narrates her transformation in a cold and almost clinical manner. He's not concerned about her suffering, he's concerned about himself, how she embarrasses him, how she disrupts his routine, and how others perceive Yong Hai's husband. And this creates a very strange effect. On one hand, the situation is deeply disturbing, but on the other hand, the narration is oddly calm. And this contrast produces a kind of an absurd tone in the narration where the readers are uncomfortable, detached, and even slightly disoriented. Now, there's also one more layer that scholars explore, and this shifts our focus to a more capitalistic and consumer culture. Because what if the novel is also economic? Karl Marx argued that in capitalist societies, the relationship between humans are replaced by the relationship between things. What this means in simple terms is that we stop trying to value people for who they are, rather, we value them for their status, their function, their utility, and what they represent. And in this reading, Yong Hai's refusal to eat meat is a rejection of what scholars call a fetishized reality. It is a world where consumption becomes normal and violence is almost invisible. This idea becomes even more disturbing in the second part of the novel, the Mongolian Marx section, where her body is not just controlled, it is commercialized for the sake of art. Her brother-in-law does not see her as a person, rather he sees her as a canvas. He sees it as an object, an aesthetic object, a visual experience, and something that can be turned into art. And even the natural feature of her body, which is the Mongolian mark at her back, it is stripped of its personal meaning and turned into something that can be displaced and consumed by others. But where it is meant to be a private issue, it is not displayed to others. There are also some critiques who discuss the idea of Friedrich Jameson. Jameson talks about how in late capitalism, instead of having a fixed sense of self, people become fragmented, performative, and they're shaped by images and external expectations. He also introduces the idea of the death of the subject. It is the idea where a stable and authentic self starts to disappear. So similarly, Yong Hai, she's no longer trying to become someone, rather she is trying to like stop being a subject altogether. She as a subject has died. Some of the scholars interpret her desire to become a tree as a response to what we call a hyperreal world. Now, this hyperreal world is where reality is replaced by images and there's nothing authentic, everything is a performance. So instead of participating in that cycle, Yong Hai is exiting it. She moves away from consumption, production, and even social identity, and in doing so, she attempts to become self sufficient. So, by unbecoming human, she's trying to escape a world where everything, including her identity, is shaped by consumption. And once again, this pushes the novel far beyond our imagination because now we're not just talking about gender or trauma, we're talking about what it means to exist in a world where even the self can be commodified. And that was the final interpretation for this video. If you're sat till here, honestly, congratulations, because you've practically sat through a mini literature review of the novella The Vegetarian. And that's the thing about this novel, because it demands that kind of depth and attention. Yes, it is a feminist text, but if we reduce the novel to just that, we are leaving a lot of the questions unanswered. So if this video helped you understand the novel better, or if it gave you a different perspective, then this video has done exactly what it is meant to do, and I'm glad I was able to do that. But if you're new to reading, all of this might feel a little bit overwhelming, and that is absolutely okay. But as a literature student, this is the kind of text that tells you to sit with questions and ask the right questions. And if you want to explore more of these ideas together, I have linked all of the research papers I referred to in the description box. Or if you have your own interpretation and would like to discuss it, I am happy to hear more about it. My email is also in the description box. You can directly email me. We can schedule a meet and discuss more about it. And with that, thank you so much for staying till the end. I am really glad you're here. Bye bye.